What's your immediate reaction? What are you doing?
Well, I think what we're doing is we're trying to figure out where equity should be going. And I think actually, after the knee-jerk reaction that we're seeing today, which is that we're seeing a risk-off move, I think actually President Trump and the Republican Party dominating the Senate and the House of Representatives could actually be rather good news, both for GDP growth in the US and therefore also, bizarrely enough, for many sectors in the equity market overall. So I think actually we should be preparing ourselves for buying on the dip.
Why do you think that, and which sectors do you think will benefit most?
Well, why do I think that, first of all? Because I think, as you've said already, and as David Bloom just said, there is the Trump that obviously had to be radical in order to make headlines and to become the sole Republican candidate and in the end to beat Hillary Clinton. And then there is the second President-elect Trump, who has to be a lot more considered. And I think for someone with no political background whatsoever, clearly he's going to have to fill his administration with those with a lot of experience. Also, remember that even though the two halves of Congress are Republican, he will have to negotiate with them to get any laws passed. And so therefore, that in nature will moderate the types of legislation that can get passed in the next 2 years before the midterm elections. So I think that means higher spending, that's faster growth, but is actually good for equities.
Edmund, if you want to get exposure to equities, as you said at the top, perhaps buying on these dips, what's the best way of doing it as a derivative man? I mean, volatility's elevated. Are call options, things like that, the best way of doing it, or just simple index purchases?
I would actually go for Delta One right at this minute because, as you've pointed out, volatility obviously has jumped sharply today on the back of this unexpected news. And so call options, as a result, are expensive. You could consider call spreads, for instance. I would actually be looking at more obvious trades. As I said, Delta One, just go nakedly long equities. The sectors I would look at would be things like healthcare, which has been absolutely pummeled both in the US and Europe on the back of fears that President-elect Clinton would enact healthcare regulation and price reform. And I think that is a lot less likely under President Trump. So actually, healthcare could be one of the biggest beneficiaries. So I'd say, first of all, healthcare. And secondly, if you're looking for something a little bit more arcane, I would say something called dispersion, which actually looks at the measure of correlation between sectors and stocks in the index. And I think that's going to widen out. There will be very polarized winners like healthcare and like infrastructure stocks, and very, very polarized losers such as utilities, which will get hurt by higher bond yields and a steeper yield curve.